Hello Wargamers and welcome to Let's Get Critical. My name is Gar. In this video we'll be painting the Angels of Death kill team. It's the same kill team that came in the starter set. I'll be guiding you through all the colours that we used. I'll be guiding you through the techniques and processes, and then at the end of the video I'll be showing you some of the images we'll be using in our battle reports. The whole emphasis for these painting videos is to show you how we've painted the miniatures that we'll be using on the battle reports. But without any further ado, let's get painting. The colour I chose was the Macragge Blue. I wanted to paint this kill team like the kill team on the video game, so I went for the ultramarine colours. The brush I'll be using to prime them is the Graduate brush. It's a cheap brush which I got from the hobby store. Very long bristles, it's perfect for this sort of work. A lot of people choose spray paint to prime models, but I actually prefer using a brush. And the trick to it is to load some paint on the brush and then just keep the paint moving over the model. You want to just keep going round and round, using those long bristles to ram it down into the crevices and get deep into the shadows. And don't be afraid to grind the bristles against there. Just keep, really being quite rough with it, but just keep going, giving it a smooth, finished coat of paint. I much prefer this sort of priming than spray paint. There are several reasons why. One is you don't need to have a spray booth, and you don't have to wait till you've got nice weather if you want to spray them outdoors, because if it's raining you can't do that. And also, another great thing about it is it's cheaper in the long run. Spray paint's generally more expensive. A pot of paint and a big brush, you can get it done much cheaper. These generally take about 2 to 3 minutes to prime. There was 7 models in there, so in about 20 minutes I got the whole box primed. And then once I'd done the last model, the captain was dry, so I came back to the captain and then carried on painting the video, showing all the other colours. And here he is now after he's dry. Really simple, and I'd really recommend buying a big brush and doing it this way. Spray paint is a bit of a pain actually, but I suppose it's up to you. The next colour is a Citadel colour. It's a layer paint called Teclis Blue. I really like this. It's a really lovely blue and it looks great dry brushed over the Macragge Blue. I'm using a medium dry brush from Citadel. As you can see from the bristles, it's quite a new brush, and I've bought it for these painting projects. Now, if you haven't done any dry brushing before, then what you do is you load some onto the bristles, and then using some kitchen roll, you want to then try and get most of it off. So essentially you're leaving very little paint on the bristles of those brushes. You've got some really big bristles with very little paint on them, and then you just gently dry brush it over the model. You just keep essentially flicking it very lightly on all the areas where you want the paint to go. I'm concentrating on the armor. I'm not going to be flicking it on the cloak or on the weapon system, because they're going to be painted a different color. But anything that's going to be blue, all of the power armor, then I'll be using the Teclis Blue. And as you can see, you just slowly, this is I think the second layer. I did 2 coats. The first one I let it dry, and then I did it again very slowly, building up the Teclis Blue color over that Macragge Blue. And you'll see when it comes to shading at the end, it does leave a very lush blue. Dry brushing is well worth learning. It's a very useful skill, and there's the final model after 2 coats of the Teclis Blue. As you can see, it's really brought out some two-tone effect, and wait till the end when you see the colour as well. Next, I'll be using a colour called Eshin Grey. It's another Citadel colour. It's a layer paint. I'll be using this to paint the inside of the cloak, and the brush that I'll be using is one of my favourites. It's the Army Painter Regiment brush, which has got a lovely tip. This is a fairly new brush. And the reason I went for Eshin Grey was because I think the Abaddon Black is just too dark, and it just really sits in there. And if you're going for a cream colour, I just don't like it. So I thought Eshin Grey would be the perfect colour. At the end, when you give it a shade, it will darken it down a bit. But I just gave it a couple of coats. In these video clips, I'll show you me giving it the first coat, and then at the end, I'll leave you again with a showcase. But I think grey was the perfect colour. It was a bit tricky getting it in there. You just had to be very careful. Parts of the cloak were very easy to get to, but you had to be really careful not to get it on that lovely blue dry brush paint. But there's the finished model there. Didn't take too long at all. Some of you might want to try using a slightly smaller brush like the character brush, but I managed to get it done with the regiment brush. I think it looks fine. The next colour is a base colour from Citadel Colour. It's called Retributor Armour, and I'll be using the Kalinsky Masterclass brush, which is again another nearly brand new brush for this project. And I wanted to pick out all the details on the power armour that are going to be gold. So I did the badge on his leg. I did the halo and the skull on his backpack. I gave this a good coat. Then I moved on to the power glove, the power fist, and he has a skull and some laurets or whatever they're called on there. Then I did the shoulder pad. The shoulder pad's got a great big gold piece on it, so I gave that a little bit of the paint, and then moved on to the other side. I wanted to get these details done before we move on to the red, because of the tassels I'll show you in the next video. And then I did the laurels on the side of his head as well. And then I moved on to the tricky piece. This is the reason I wanted to do the gold now. So when I painted those paulettes, those fabric tassels, whatever they are, it's so much easier. And getting in there was quite tricky. But the Kalinsky Masterclass brush has got a nice small tip, and there it is at the end. It's a bit fiddly. Getting all the I did the shoulder armor as well, as you can see, and I also did a lorette. But all the gold details were done with the Kalinsky Masterclass brush. The next colour is a base colour from Citadel. It's Methyston Red, and the brush I'll be using is the Insane Detail brush from the Army Painter. This is a very, very thin brush, and you'll see why. I started off by painting the seals. These are called the Purity seals, and I wanted those to be red. There's one here on his waist hanging off some gold thing, and there's two on his leg as well, which are underneath his cape, which were very tricky to get to. But very slowly, I dabbed on some red paint. And then I moved on to these tassels, and again, just very, very gently with some very watered down red paint, I just kept, flicking at it, almost adding, tiny little dots and stripes and building the colour up. And then I moved to the Kalinsky Masterclass brush, which is slightly bigger than the Insane Detail, and I moved on to the tunic at the front. Having done the paulettes or the tassels and the seals, I then obviously decided a slightly bigger brush would be better. That obviously got 2 coats of paint, and then after that it was the Army Regiment brush again, and then I moved on to the cape at the back. This actually got 3 coats, I think, so I wanted a really, really rich red colour on the cape, and it was quite easy to paint. It was quite large, it was some really nice brush strokes, and I just got the paint on there and had fun. I think as soon as I added the red to that cape, I think the model just started to pop and look fantastic. It's a really, really rich red colour, the Methyston Red. I really, really like it. The Regiment brush has got a lovely tip. I really do recommend the Regiment brush for anyone who wants to get into painting models. If you were using smaller brushes, it can take forever to paint these tiny pieces, and the Regiment brush, it's got a lovely tip, it holds plenty of paint, and it's amazing how much coverage you can get in such a small space of time. But there's the final cape and all the red details done. I think it's really starting to show off now. It's starting to look more like the box art from this character. The next colour I used was a layer paint called Pallid Witch Flesh. I'm using this to paint the Purity seals, and the brush I'll be using again is the Insane Detail brush, which is a very, very thin, top quality brush from the Army Painter. These Purity seals are obviously a wax seal, and then they've got what's supposed to be like a parchment, like a fabric, and I decided, instead of using Corax white or white, I like this Pallid Witch Flesh. It's a lovely colour. So I'm not sure if you've ever painted whites before, but they seem to go dry very quickly, and they seem to be, you know, quite bitty. Again, you've got to add a bit of water to the paint, like a 50-50 mix of water and paint on your palette, and just do some very thin strokes. I also painted the helmet because I want to go for the red and white stripe down the center of his head. So this centerpiece on his helmet got a coat of the pallid witch flesh as well. It's not obviously a true white, but it's very much just a slightly off-white color. I do like it. And there's the final piece with the purity seals and the helmet stripe done. There's options in the box for a skull or a helmet. I definitely prefer the helmet, especially with the red and white stripe down the center. The next colour I chose to use is a base colour from Citadel called Iron Hands Steel. I'll be using this to primarily just paint the weapons. The brush I'll be using is the Regiment brush from the Army Painter. One thing I will say at this point, as you'll probably see in the image, is that I did the red stripe down the helmet, as you can see there, you know, off the camera. I forgot to turn the camera on when I was doing it. But for the weapon system, I just gave it 2 coats of the Iron Hand Steel. Some of the other models have got more complicated weapons, and there's other little bits on them, which I painted Iron Hand Steel. But on this character model, it was just his plasma pistol. They're quite thick, the metallic paints from Citadel, so again you have to thin them down with some water. Oh yes, and I forgot I did paint this piping on his power fist as well. But that's the final, that's the metallic detail. The power armor on these takes up most of the model. The blue paint, you know, there's literally just a few dabs of real metal color. I think it's starting to look great. The next colour is a colour called Storm Vermin Fur. It's a layer paint from Citadel. And the brush I'll be using is the Regiment brush. What I want to do now is start building up the colours on the base. So I use the Storm Vermin Fur to apply it to the rocks on the base. I just very quickly gave it again a couple of coats. Be very careful not to get it onto the power armor on his feet. And I just wanted to start building up. I love these already detailed bases. You don't have to add, you know, rocks to them. You just have to paint them up. I think they look fantastic. All the models in this Angels of Death kill team have got great bases. So do the Plague Marines as well. The next colour I shifted to was called Astro Granite. It's a technical paint. Now the brush I use for this is a very, very cheap. I got like a pack of 10 of them for $5. I got it from the hobby, so it's a synthetic bristle brush. Don't use your good brushes on it, because these technical paints will just destroy them and they'll waste them in no time at all. These paints are more like a thick paste. You don't essentially paste them on, paint them on. It's more like just dabbing on like a, you know, like a paste. You've got to be really, really careful and really, really slowly building up the colour. But when they do dry, they do give a fantastic effect, and I think it looks brilliant. And there's the base done. You get down to the final part now where we just add a shade to tie all those colours in together and really make it look absolutely brilliant. In this final section, I'll be using a shade called Null Noil from Citadel Colour, and I'll be using a Citadel shade brush. It's the medium-sized brush. I really do like these for shading. They are really, really good. And if you haven't done shading before, you know, it is one of the best parts because it hides all those tiny little imperfections and it ties all those colours in together, and it adds a depth and a realism and detail to the model that's just absolutely brilliant. You have to apply quite a liberal coat of this shade, but what you don't want are massive pools of it. So once you've got the shade on there, you need to just keep moving it around and using those big bristles on the brush to soak up any puddles and not to let it, you know, pool basically. Dry brushing is something you want to learn when doing miniatures, and so is shading. You know, the painting, the shading and the dry brushing are separate things, and the shading part is very much a skill in itself. You just learn in time what a nice layer of shade is, and if you're unsure, then just apply 2 or even 3 small layers. I managed to do this in just one layer. I just slapped what looks like quite a lot of shade onto the model, and then I just started taking the pulls off with the brush. But when it dries, it looks fantastic. And this null shade over the Macragge blue with a Teclis blue dry brush, I think it's a really fantastic blue colour. It's almost like a rich, electric, lush blue. I so much prefer it to the Macragge blue with a Dawnstone dry brush that other people use. But the model is nearly finished now, so what I'm going to do is leave you with a final showcase of the model when it was completely dry. And now in a few seconds after this, I want to leave you with an outro. It's a presentation video with some music showing you the whole kill team and showing you, what it will look like on the battle reports that are coming soon. But my name was Gar. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.